Welcome to News and Brews with the Times, where we spill the tea on what's happening in Hall County, Georgia. It's May 12th, 2025. Joining me today is Greg Finan Jr., the life editor at the Times. Thanks, Greg.
It's good to be here.
He is filling in for Stacy Smith, and reporter Ben Anderson is also joining us as we talk about local schools and a star rating program the state just started back up.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Last week was a busy one for the newsroom at the Times, so grab your favorite brew and take a sip as we guide you through what's been happening in Hall County. Greg, it was a crazy week in our newsroom.
Yeah, there's an old saying that an empty newsroom is a busy newsroom, and last week the newsroom was pretty sparse with people.
So they're all out on the street gathering stories, talking to people.
Yeah, there was a lot going on last week.
So I know this story initially happened, I think, a couple weeks ago. We had this crash on Academy Street that killed a pedestrian. We talked about it on the podcast. But last week, Nick Watson, our court reporter, was in court for the woman who's suspected. She had a bond hearing.
Yeah, that's correct. I think the craziest thing about that is just learning that they had video of it, and after she had struck the person, she looked back and still kept going. It's just a disturbing piece of information.
Yeah, that's really interesting that they have video of it, and that was presented in the courtroom. That's got to be just really horrendous to do that. I can't imagine what your reactions are.
Yeah, and the fact that they didn't actually catch up with her until she got to Dahlonega was pretty insane as well. But we did notice today walking downtown that there is a small memorial on that street corner for the victim.
Yes.
And it's worth noting that she previously pleaded no contest in March 2024.
What does that mean? No contest?
It's basically you don't plead guilty or not guilty. And that was to a reckless driving charge that was reduced from a DUI.
That's right. She had kind of a history. She also done some, I think, was convicted of shoplifting.
Yes.
So she's got a few things already on her record. She probably played into how the judge ruled on this case. But I'm sure Nick Watson will be following up as that case moves forward.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really heavy story. I promise we'll talk about some pizza and Mexican food later. But one of the biggest stories I think we do have to talk about is, unfortunately, another crash that affected the East Hall community. And this guy who was a coach over there who just seems to have been so well liked.
Yeah, being a former sports reporter myself, I know how big an impact that local coaches can have on the community, not just the kids, but their families as well. And so this is just a tragic loss that I'm sure is going to reverberate throughout the whole community.
Yeah, I know on our social media channels, a lot of people have been pouring out support for him and sharing kind of some of their stories about what an impact he made on their life. Even on my own socials, I've seen those kinds of stories being shared. So he definitely had a lot of love from the community.
Yeah, and I do think that we have some stories in the works giving a better picture of the impact that he had on the different people's lives in this community as well.
Yeah, that's right. So I think we're talking with the principal at the school there, and then also some of the other coaches that he knew. So we'll have a fuller picture of who he was. I know that's always really important when we have stories like this. You know, we have to report on this really heavy stuff, but we definitely want to paint a fuller picture of the person and not just report, man killed in motorcycle crash. Because, he left a big hole in the community, and that's really important to share.
Well, in my world, this local restaurant that's going to be on America's Best Restaurants was the biggest news of the week.
And which restaurant was that?
Well, you're just going to have to go and read my story.
I see how it is. Well, I've got a subscription, so hold on just a moment. Senior Fiesta. That's definitely a popular place.
Yeah, based on the atmosphere that I saw at Senior Fiestas when I went over there the other day to talk about this story, it looks like a really fun environment. The food is authentic Mexican, made from scratch. Just seems to be a really popular and beloved place. So I think it's pretty exciting that they'll be able to get this national exposure on America's Best Restaurants.
Yeah, so tell us about that show. Where can you find that?
So it's done through Food Network, but they have a YouTube channel and social media that the episodes will actually air on. The filming of this will actually be tomorrow between 2 and 5. So if you're looking to get on a food show, you might want to go have lunch tomorrow at Senor Fiestas.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool to see yourself in the background on TV. But my favorite dining story of the week was Little Italy rising from the ashes for a 5th time.
Yeah. So Ben Cortese, the owner of Little Italy, is at it again. Maybe 5th time's the charm, as they say.
I think we said that on the 4th time.
Yep, that was, I think, the lead for the 4th story. But he says he's sort of learned from his mistakes. His mistake was he tried to make too much of the pizza himself. He didn't have experienced pizza makers. Now he has gone out, he's found seasoned pizza makers, and they're going to be running the kitchen for the most part, and he's going to kind of transition into a more owner/manager role.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know we've reported obviously a lot on his openings and closings. And all through that, I think no one's ever said the pizza was bad. Greg, I think you've got some experience with that.
Yeah, actually, I have pretty personal experience with Little Italy and Peppino's, which is also a Cortese family restaurant. I worked for them for 12 years when I went to school in Athens, and I'm going to tell you, like a phoenix rises out of the fire. They're coming back strong. I've already eaten there twice, and yeah, the quality of the pizza is hands down one of the best. So I know he can be a little controversial and maybe a little too colorful for people at times, but if it's quality pizza that you want, I think that this might be the one, and the time that they actually end up working. But I do know actually some of the experienced pizza men that he brought in. I've worked with them before. One of them just recently was the night manager at the Little Italy in Athens and has been doing that particular position for the past 5 years. So I know they've got good workers in this time. So knock on wood that this one makes it work.
Yeah, we'll see. I do want to point out, I know we've had people on our social media suggesting that he's paying us. He is not. We do cover a lot of opening and closings of restaurants. We've learned over time that people really like to read about that. And he just has opened and closed a lot of times. So he's been in the news a lot. I remain skeptical, but we'll see how it goes for him. Another really crazy story was the latest on this shooting that happened in a neighborhood in Oakwood. Ben, I think you were out at the scene, right?
Yeah, so basically, a brother or a guy was charged with shooting his brother at an Oakwood home last week.
So I
Initially,
think that was actually the Friday before last from when this is airing.
Yes. And initially, we didn't have a ton of information. We knew that the police chief was kind of patrolling the area, not clear why. He heard some gunshots go off. And then a man comes out of the house, says, "My brother has shot me." He renders first aid, calls for backup, and a 30-minute standoff ensues.
Yeah, so that sounds crazy, but then I think we learned that there were some TikTok videos that made the whole story even crazier, and that's what you reported last week.
Yeah, so apparently during the standoff, the man who was charged with shooting his brother, he posted some videos on TikTok, and they were a bit bizarre.
A bit.
Yeah, so the gist of it was he made 3 videos, and he basically said that his brother is trying to frame him for being a vegan. So not clear what's going on there. The Oakwood Police Department says they don't have anything in their records about him having a history of mental health issues. He hasn't been previously arrested by the Oakwood Police Department. So, be interesting to find out more as this case moves forward.
Yeah, you have to think there has to be some mental health issue there based on what you wrote about those videos. And it is Mental Health Awareness Month, I'd like to point out. We're participating in that here on Green Street. But yeah, I guess we don't know at this point what might have been going. Well, we do know what was going through his head because it was on video, and it just doesn't make any logical sense.
It doesn't, but that's what makes the story so fascinating in a weird way. So we'll continue to cover that.
So coming up next week, Ben, you'll have a story about school climate ratings. Tell us what those are.
Okay, so school climate rating basically measures the learning environment in a school and just kind of the overall well-being in a school. How do they determine those ratings? They basically conduct surveys, they look at attendance rates and disciplinary rates.
We've got the star ratings for every school I worked on putting that chart together. I'd like to point out that my kid's school has 5 stars.
Well, congrats on that. That's good to know that your school has a good environment for your kids.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, something that parents, they want to know that their kid's school is good. And you can, we report a lot on test scores too, and this is just a different way to measure that, I guess. Not the test scores, obviously, but kind of how good a school might be.
Yeah, I'm curious if that 5-star rating surprised you.
For my
Like,
kid's
does
school,
that
no.
okay, does that comport with kind of your experience as a parent?
Yes, and definitely makes sense with what I've heard about those school systems. Like North Hall has a good reputation, and some of that, you look at test scores, and we've reported a lot about that and how it correlates somewhat with demographics. So you always have to keep all of that in mind, I think. And I don't know if that's the same with the climate ratings, but I would guess it has some.
Yeah, demographics is always part of the story whenever we cover our local schools. We have a lot of Hispanic students and English learners. One interesting thing, though, is that Lyman Hall Elementary, which is
Mhm.
overwhelmingly Hispanic and has a lot of English learners, had a 5-star rating. And I think that's just because it has a kind of close-knit community there. And so, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. I know there were a lot of different ratings for schools. I mean, everything from 1 star to 5 stars. I also work with our Forsyth County News property, and those schools over there have a fantastic reputation. Put a chart together for them. They're all 4 and 5 stars except for one school that had 3. So, I mean, like you said, like we've got high poverty rates here too, which is definitely a big difference between us and Forsyth County. I don't know how that exactly plays in with the surveys of how parents are feeling and teachers and students. But it's all important to include all of that context, I think, when you're looking at ratings like this.
Right.
So that story will be out this week,
Yes.
and you can check out the chart, see how your kids, your grandkids, your friends, whoever, how their school has been rated. So you can learn more about any of the stories we've talked about today at the link in our show notes. And if you've got news, tips, or questions, you can email us at podcastadmin@gainesvilletimes.com. Join us again next week.